Hey everyone, it's Hannah. I wanted to quickly ask if you are enjoying the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. It goes a long way in getting the show in front of other listeners. If you listen on a platform that doesn't do reviews, please follow us on social media, like the show, or leave a comment. Thank you. We love you guys, and we hope you enjoy the show. You're listening to The Tales We Tell, a podcast about spooky stories, unsolved mysteries, and local lore. I'm your host, Hannah Parch.
And I'm Katy.
Welcome back! We remembered!
It sounded like you got a little bit of performance anxiety there for a second. 1 week off and just...
I know. For those of you who don't know, because hopefully Jarek worked his magic very well, for the first time in 3 years...
3.5
years. Last week we forgot to do the intro. Which we do live every time. Yep. That's a new...
It's not a canned intro.
That is a fresh baby intro every time. And we just both breezed right through it. I truly would not have... Jarek would have had to tell me Monday night when he was editing, had you not texted me and been like, did we record the intro?
Yeah, and the only reason I thought of it was because I was going to text you and be like, oh, be sure to tell Jarek that all of that, nonsense of like us catching up and me venting and whatnot, that can be cut. None of that is interesting.
Yeah.
And that's when it hit me. Like I was about to text you that and I'm like, oh. Wait, hold on. Because I was like rethinking all the stuff that we talked about.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I do not remember recording the intro.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, driving home from work or something.
Yep.
And you get home and you're like, I have no memory of the drive.
Yep.
Like, obviously it happened, but you have no memory of it. And I'm like, maybe the intro did happen and I just don't remember it.
Yeah.
Because that's a thing that happens to me a lot.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah. And it felt so natural. Mm-hmm. I mean, didn't register in my brain that we didn't do it, even though it's literally something we have done over 200 times.
We kind of shoot the shit both before and after the intro. So the idea of just us talking, just like we're doing right now, and then going right into the story, totally natural.
Yeah, it's true. I think I was also really excited for last week's story, and so I'm going to blame it on that. I was just really excited to tell you about the aliens.
So speaking of, the awesome children's books?
Yes.
That I've got, Walker, like the Monster ABC that I recited perfectly for you.
And when you came in and just I
threw the book at you, and I was like, want to see my new trick? I'm actually going to go through the Monster ABC and start planning out some Tales We Tales.
Ooh.
Because we all know how much I love the cryptids.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite stories. And obviously I'm going to skip, A, J, S, Alien, Jersey Devil, Sasquatch.
Right.
And there's probably a couple others.
Right.
But there's, like one or two. Like there's one I can't pronounce.
Nice.
The Q, it's like Questacotl, because I'm going to figure out how to pronounce it, and I'm going to do that one.
Good. Excited for that.
Yeah. That's why I say, I'm like, Q is for this guy who's easy to spot. R is for Reaper, if you're ready or not.
Fun treat to hear.
I was mostly actually more inspired by the newest one that I got him. It's a flat book. So it's really fun.
Ooh,
it's called Nessie Baby.
Nessie Baby.
And Walker loves it.
So sweet.
But I think I'm going to go alphabetically. Okay. Obviously skipping Alien because we just did one / we've done a couple. So
it's very generic too. Lots of aliens.
Yeah. But
nice.
Be ready for B is for Banshee, who won't quiet down.
Ooh, Banshees. That's very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yay! I'm excited for more cryptids. I'm terrible at covering them, but I want to.
That's fine, because I got your back.
Thank you. And now you have a reference book for it. At least 20 3 of them.
Yeah.
Or possibly at least 23.
You know what's funny? I can never remember if it's 24 or 26 letters.
Really?
You know what else is funny?
What?
I cannot remember if Shelton's birthday is the 24th or the 26th.
Oh. I sometimes forget if Jarek's is the 27th or the 28th. And I think the way that I remember is because Nick Carter's is the 28th. And I know that it's not that one. I'm pretty sure it's the 27th.
Yeah. By the way, Shelton's is August 24th.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
Yeah.
I'll remember that for when I get that Piggly Wiggly shirt. Isn't that what I said I was going to get him? A Piggly Wiggly shirt? Or was I going to do something stupid with it?
I don't know. Several years ago, for Stephanie's birthday, we did a Stephanie party.
Yes.
And
I wore my first romper at that party.
Yep. And Shelton wore a romp him. I couldn't remember that if you were there or not.
What's funny is I have so many more Stephanie-esque rompers now. And I love them. And I could do a Stephanie way better now. That romper I wore to her party was not at all a romper she would wear, but it was the only one I had. Yeah.
Well, I feel like we should do a Shelton party.
We should.
I mean, it would be super easy. Everyone would wear literally Piggly Wiggly t-shirts, and that would be it.
I would wear a Piggly Wiggly t-shirt underneath a pharmacist coat.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would carry around all of my Publix pharmacy bottles. Just in my pockets. So I'd rattle.
Well, you should definitely put, like, candy or something in there.
That's a great idea. Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should dress up as Shelton for Halloween. Or maybe I should dress Walker up as Shelton for Halloween.
Oh my gosh, that would be so cute. I'm currently trying to convince Jarek, because...
I heard my name.
Hello. Oh, you're doing this now?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Happy
Lord.
birthday.
You don't have to sing.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be weird.
Yay.
Yay.
Would you like some cheesecake, Katie?
A small slice,
Yeah,
please.
give me a small slice too, because I'm going to have some after dinner.
And
Please.
tomorrow. And the next
tomorrow.
day.
Yeah.
Listen, cheat
Well,
weekend.
That's the brilliant part about cake.
Calories don't count on your birthday
No.
anyways, so. Anyways, I'm trying to convince Jarek, since we always do a couples themed costume, I really have my heart set on being Stevie Nicks this year because I'm really starting to get into Fleetwood Mac. And
Love Fleetwood Mac.
I know. And so
I might have like a cool duster you could borrow.
ooh, yes please. I have a lace kimono, but I don't know if it's full. I don't know. I actually don't know if I still have it. I might have given it away. Oh no. Right before my Fleetwood Mac phase. Anyways, in my head, the only logical option for Jarek is to be Lindsey Buckingham, the cheating ex-boyfriend.
I thought she got with the other guy in the band too, though.
Mick Fleetwood?
No, I don't remember.
She did date the guy from the Eagles briefly, but I looked him up and he did not have a great beard. Lindsey Buckingham had a pretty sweet beard, and we just throw a wig on him. Any tips, listeners, on either who else Jarek could dress up as? I did also suggest any other member of Fleetwood Mac, which his options are only Mick Fleetwood or John McVie. My first announcement is a congratulations. She's here.
Oh,
I know. Isn't she beautiful?
so precious.
We're congratulating
Amanda.
our listener, Amanda, who had her very beautiful baby. I think her name is Emmy.
I like that the hat's a bow.
I know. Also, truly a cute newborn.
Mm-hmm. Those are not common.
I
at
know.
all.
I love not having to lie about how cute a newborn is.
I mean, Walker was because he's mine. I'm sure other people don't agree with me, and that's fine.
No, he was pretty cute. She is just like truly just a angelic looking. I mean, that baby looks like it's never cried, ever, and won't.
Critter spent his first hour making his presence known.
But
He was not happy to be here.
anyways, she is beautiful. We almost almost had the same birthday. Real close. But congratulations, Amanda. She's so beautiful. Ugh.
Congrats. Well done, Mama.
You know. And then my second announcement is just the episode rating today, which is PG-13. So Tiny Tim and Dante have to go away.
Sign off, boys.
Yep. And have you been paying attention to the news?
Vaguely. Depends.
Okay. I almost texted you because this is kind of a
Current event?
Current event.
All right. I'm going to say probably not.
Okay. Well, I am sure a ton of podcasts are going to be covering this now. Mm-hmm. I know a ton of podcasts have covered this particular case in the past, but we have not.
Okay.
So, have you heard of or are you familiar with the Long Island serial killer?
Yes.
Okay.
I have listened to a podcast on LISK.
Oh, great. Because my third announcement was shout out to the podcast LISK because I binged through that shit.
Oh, I haven't listened to that one. I've listened to an episode called LISK.
Oh, well, there's a podcast called LISK that has, I think, 3 seasons. I'm going to refer everyone back to that for so much more detailed information because when I tell you that this could be a 5-part episode and I had to pare down so much information, but I really, really, really wanted to give the victims, like, do good by the victims and, like, you know, tell their stories. So, anyways, I'm going to tell you about the Long Island serial killer, also known as the Gilgo Beach murders.
Yep.
Okay. You also have a pretty substantial dossier.
Woohoo! Oh, hefty.
I know. You got a lot in there. And you can actually look at your first picture because we are starting with Shannon Gilbert. I know. Shannon was born October 24th of 1986 in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. She was the oldest of 4 daughters born to Mary Gilbert. We don't know about her dad. We don't care about her dad. Dad's not in the picture. And Shannon actually ended up in foster care when she was 5 or 6, but her sisters remained with her mom. And it's kind of unclear why her mom would say it was because Shannon had bipolar disorder and was like really like wouldn't take her medication and was just like too much for her to manage. Other people would say that Mary had like substance abuse problems. It was just not like a healthy situation at home, and for whatever reason Shannon was the one who was removed from the situation. But then like all the sisters went to school together, so Shannon like saw her sisters at school and was like, so it was kind of a weird thing where she was like,
that's really weird.
It was weird. So she like didn't have a great childhood. And there was definitely mental health problems within the family. But Shannon was an aspiring singer, and when she finished high school, she kind of struggled initially to get her feet under her. She kind of bounced around from job to job. I think she enrolled in school, but she was just finding it hard to make the kind of money she needed to make to pay for things because everything is expensive.
Even more so now.
Yeah. So she ended up stumbling upon escort work. And she started out working for an escort service, like an actual company. And then that company got shut down because, low-key, it was illegal. But when that happened, she realized that she could just work for herself and make way more money doing it herself because she would cut out the middleman. Mm-hmm. So the very first episode of the LISK podcast goes really in-depth into this, and they interview her boyfriend at the time, and they interview the driver that she worked with when she was going solo, and they were like, she was like one of the first people to like use Craigslist and Backpage, which is I guess a site specifically for this. And they were like, she got like the iPhone 1, like she went and bought that, and like something that seemed like such a common thing was like,
She was cutting edge.
yeah, like she figured out she could post her own ads for herself. And then with her iPhone, which was like new technology, she could be out like working jobs and also accepting other jobs at the same time.
Setting up the next gig.
Yeah, like so they were like, she was so smart, like figuring it out.
Savvy businesswoman.
Yeah. And she was also smart because she still used a driver. So she wasn't like doing it by herself. And so she was using a guy named Michael. And I think she met him at the escort service where she used to work.
Okay.
And so he would still get a cut of the profits, but there wasn't some bigger company who was acting as a pimp, essentially.
And there wasn't a whole bunch of overhead and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. So on April 30th of 2010, after a relatively normal day where Shannon went on a movie date with her boyfriend, she decided that she wanted to try and work that night because I think she had like bills coming up or something. She was like, I want to try to make some money. So she calls Michael, and he comes and picks her up. And according to Michael, they just kind of sat in the car for a while. I guess they like went and drove to somewhere and just sat and waited for calls to come in. And finally they get a call from a guy named Joe Brewer, and he wanted them to come out to a gated community in Oak Beach, Long Island. And it was pretty far away. It was like an hour, 15 minutes away. But he was offering them $500, or offering her $500.
Right.
Because it was so far away. So they were like, sure, we'll do it, I guess. We haven't had any other jobs. So by the time they get out there, it is 1 a.m. It's now May 1st. And I guess this is normal to just work like overnight hours.
I don't know. I've never been an escort.
I know. So they get there. Joe comes and like meets them at the gate and like lets them in because he doesn't want to give them the code, I guess.
Fair.
And then Michael waits in the car while Shannon goes in for the job, which is like typical of what they would do. He would wait outside for her. And after about 30 minutes, Shannon called Michael and asked him to run to the store for her and get a deck of cards, massage oil, and lube. Very interesting. I think just a very interesting list.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael said sometimes she would do this as a way of like kind of padding the time with the client to be like, oh, my driver's actually, I don't know if it was like my driver is gone, I can't leave yet, or if it was like, oh, we've got massage oil now. Let me draw this out for another 30 minutes and now you have to pay me extra. But they were like, this community, it was like not close to anything. Mm-hmm. So anything would be like kind of a drive. It's not like there's the Walgreens up the street.
Right.
And Michael didn't know.
Also, something that's going to be open.
Yeah. It's
after 1 a.m.
Yeah. And so Michael like points this out and he's like, I don't want to do that. Like everything's really far away. And he probably also didn't want to just leave her there.
Mm-hmm.
And Shannon got kind of mad at him and hung up. But a little while later, Joe, the client, calls and he's like, don't worry about it. I'm going to take her to go grab some stuff. And Michael was like, okay, sure. So Michael sees Joe and Shannon leave in Joe's Jeep. And then they come back after about 20 minutes. And they kind of pointed out in the podcast that 20 minutes was not long enough for them to have gone anywhere significant. Mm-hmm. So, and they weren't carrying any bags when they came back.
It was probably more like it was 20 minutes one way to the closest place.
Yeah.
Instead of 20 minutes round trip.
So the speculation is that they probably went to get some drugs from somewhere and just came back. Around 4 a.m., Shannon called Michael to tell him that Joe wanted to extend the date by an hour. And Michael said, okay. And then just before 5 a.m., Joe comes out of the house and comes up to Michael, which is like not normal. And he says, you need to come inside and get Shannon. She's acting weird. She's freaking out and she won't leave. And I want her to leave. And so Michael goes inside. He says Shannon does, in fact, look kind of freaked out. At this point, Shannon has called 911, but she is like, she's just like holding the phone. She's not talking to them. Mm-hmm. They did not release her phone call until, like, I don't know, a couple years ago. Like, and who knows why. The police are incredibly sketchy in this story. This is not a great story for police. Except for, like, there's like 2 cops that are good in this, and these are not them. So I listened to this 911 call, and it's 23 minutes long. And so, like, at the very beginning, you imagine she is just holding this phone because the operator is like, hello, you called 911, hello, like, what's going on? And then very, very, very quietly, you hear Shannon say, someone's after me. She just repeats this several times. She, like, won't elaborate. The operator is asking her where she is, and she's like, I don't know. I'm in a house. And she's
so helpful.
I know. And they're like, where are you? Like, are you on Long Island? She says, I'm at Jones Beach which she's not. She's not at Jones Beach. She's at Oak Beach. And they think the reason that she said Jones Beach is because you see a lot of signs for that when you're going into Oak Beach. Jones Beach is a state park.
So not a house.
No. Also, because of this detail, because she says I'm on Jones Beach or in Jones Beach, they end up transferring her call to state police instead of keeping her on to county police or whoever actually would need to be there. She also asks them at some point when they're like, where are you? And she's like, I don't know. Can't you trace my call? And they're like,
that's not a thing we do.
No, we can't. And, like, she's also very clearly, like...
Sure, in the movies.
Yeah. She's also very clearly, like, either drunk or, like, high or something. Like, she's not in her right mind, obviously. And, like, I will say kudos to the operator for, like... I'm sure this is literally their job. They're not allowed to hang up on you. But, like, they stay on the line and, like, are like, okay, I guess we have to figure out what's going on. Even though this woman is, like, literally not talking to us and we're just listening to what's going on. But you can hear in the background both Joe and Michael trying to get her to leave the house. And she's just saying, no, I'm not going to leave. Please don't make me leave. At some point, she starts believing that Joe and Michael are plotting together to kill her. And she tells the 911 operator this. And she's telling Michael this. Michael, like, her friend. And Michael's like, what are you talking about? Like, no, we're not. I was with you when you got this call. No, like, what? Come on. Like, let's go. At one point, Joe tries to grab Shannon and carry her out of the house, which is, like, awful to listen to because she freaks out. And so she ends up freaking out and running out of the house. And at that point, Michael, he's been literally arguing with her for, like, 15 minutes. And he's like, I'm just going to wait in the car. Come to me when you're ready to leave. So he's waiting in the car when she bolts out of the house, and he sees her run. So he's like, okay, I'm going to go follow her with my car and try to get her to get in. I mean, he is essentially, I think, thinking that he is just dealing with, like, your drunk friend at the party that you're just trying to get to, like, your drunk, go
belligerent
home.
Friend, or, you know, high on something, and they're seeing purple elephants.
Yeah.
And you're just tired and over it.
Yeah. Yep. And you're the sober one.
Yep.
And you're just, like, trying to get them to go home.
Been there.
So Shannon runs to a couple neighboring houses and is knocking on the doors. She's still on the phone with 911, by the way, so, like, you can hear all of this. And she ends up going to the house of a guy named Gus Coletti, who's an older gentleman. And he's 4 houses down from Joe, and he's close to the main gate. And Gus answers the door, and I don't think anyone else had answered the door for her. He answers the door. He would later tell police that he thought Shannon was, like, a 14-year-old girl because she's very small. She's, like, very petite. On the 911 call, you can hear him, like, saying, you know, like, what's wrong? What's going on? And, like, if Shannon is saying anything to him, it's very hard to make out. Like, she's not screaming or freaking out.
She's just...
Yeah. And at some point, what Gus says is that he... says, okay, I'm gonna call the police. And it's unclear if he says, if the way he said it was, you're freaking me out, I'm gonna call the police
on you,
or
you're freaked out, I'm gonna call the police to help you.
Yes, exactly. But whenever he said that,
He probably didn't know.
yeah,
It's like,
I don't know.
could go either way.
Yeah. Whenever he said that, Shannon ran
Bolted
off
again.
again. And she also, at this point, hears Michael approaching in the car, so she runs and hides behind Gus's boat that is, like, parked in his driveway or whatever. Michael pulls up and is talking to Gus, and he's like, hey, we're just leaving a party. I'm just trying to find my friend and get her home. And Gus is like, okay, well, I called the police. And Michael's like, no, you don't need to do that. And Gus is like, okay, well, I did. Probably get off of my yard or whatever. And then at this point, Shannon takes this opportunity to, like, bolt towards the gates, like, to leave the community. And Michael said, he's like, I didn't think I could lose her because there was only one way out of that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so he didn't, like, immediately go after her. But what ended up happening is that when she left, she took a left out of the neighborhood, which I think just takes you, like, kind of further and deeper into stuff. And when Michael left, he took a right. So when he left to go look for her, he can't find her. And he looks for a while, and eventually he's like, okay, the cops are coming at some point. I'm technically caught up in some illegal stuff. I don't want to be here when the cops are here. Shannon's made it very clear she doesn't want me to be, like, I'm just gonna go.
Mm-hmm.
The cops are coming. The cops will take care of it. So he goes home, and it's right around 6 o'clock when he leaves. So at 6:10, the cops do finally show up. They talk to Gus. They don't do a full search of anything.
Of course not. Because what's one drunk woman?
I know.
Like, what do they care?
They assume that it is a domestic disturbance. I think one other neighbor had called the cops also. And the weird thing is because Shannon's phone call had been transferred to state police,
I was wondering about this.
there was no connection that, like, no one was ever dispatched for her call.
Right.
Like, state police was just like, okay, our call got dropped. Like, we'll make a report on it. But no one ever made the connection that the woman calling, saying someone's after me, someone's going to kill me, was the woman that these other people in this community were calling about, saying, there's a woman who's freaked out running around our neighborhood knocking on doors. So no one...
Delightful.
Yeah. So Shannon's boyfriend at the time, Alex Diaz, confronted Joe, the client.
The John.
The John, if you will.
I don't know how, I can't imagine doing that work and being in a relationship, or being in a relationship with someone who's doing that work.
Yeah.
Not to, like, you know, put it down or anything, or put people who do that down. I don't know how, like, I personally couldn't do it.
Yeah, I would find that hard also. So when Shannon doesn't come home and Alex finds out who the last person she went to was, he confronts Joe. Joe denies doing anything. He tells him, you know, like, she freaked out, she ran off. And Alex is like, I didn't believe him. And so I was trying to, like, call his bluff. And so Alex is like, well, fine, let's go to the cops. And Joe, mind you, who is, like, a wealthy white man, is like, okay, let's go to the cops then. Like, how do you think this is going to play out? Exactly how you would expect. They go to the cops, who shockingly don't give a fuck that a young sex worker has gone missing.
Oh, darn, not again. Another one. Oh,
Whoops.
well.
Oh, no. They tell Alex that he has to file a missing persons report in New Jersey because that's where Shannon lived, which this comes up a lot. I think that is very stupid. You should be able to file a missing persons report where the person went missing.
Yeah.
But this comes up.
That just seems logical.
Yeah, like, if you went missing in Pennsylvania and the Pennsylvania police were like, go home and file a missing person.
She's not missing in New Jersey. She's missing in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, like, okay. They're literally like, okay, sure, we'll definitely look into this. Wink, wink. Go file your missing persons report. So they do. Alex and Shannon's mom, Mary, eventually filed this missing persons report. And then...
Because they also have to wait the 24 hours, too.
Yeah.
So this...
Yeah. And about a month later, because cops aren't really doing anything, so it's a month later before Suffolk County Police take any real action towards trying to find Shannon. And by any real action, I mean they asked Officer John Malia, who, good cop, we like him, to search the marshy areas of Oak Beach where Shannon was last seen. But they are asking him to do this because he has a very special partner.
A good dog?
A very good dog named Blue. But Blue's a cadaver dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not the most hopeful, not the thing that you want, not the first steps you want the investigators to be taking when your loved one is missing. And in reality, these were truly more exercises for Blue. Like, I don't think they were expecting to find anything. They were just like, here's something we can put down on paper as a reason for having this dog out here.
Here's another training exercise that we can, use to put in a grant for more funding for more cadaver dogs and such.
Yeah.
And other fancy equipment and things.
But to his credit, Officer Malia ended up taking Blue out just like whenever he had free time. Mm-hmm. They looked all around the areas near Oak Beach, and then eventually he began focusing on the Parkway because an FBI statistic said that dumped bodies are frequently found near roadways. So he's like, I'm gonna work smarter, not harder, and look near the roadways. And on December 11th of 2010, Blue alerts on something. It is a burlap sack containing skeletal remains. Officer Malia obviously calls this in, and he is at the scene the following day to help Homicide collect the evidence. And while he's there, he literally almost stumbles over a second body that is also wrapped in burlap and also skeletal. And at that point, he's like, I have Blue in the car. I think I'm going to go grab him real quick.
I'm going to go for a little walkabout.
We're just going to go for a walk. And by 1:20 p.m., Blue had tracked down 2 more bodies, both in burlap sacks, and both of them skeletal. And unfortunately, and shockingly, none of those 4 bodies were Shannon. Okay, your next picture. I'm now going to tell you about the Gilgo Four, as they are known, or the Gilgo Beach Four. So, Melissa Barthélemy was 24 when she is found. And I'm going to go into her thing first.
Oh, sorry.
That's
I
okay.
thought you were going to just name them, my bad.
Yeah, sorry. So, Melissa was born April 14th of 1985 in Buffalo, New York. Shout out to upstate New York.
I've been there.
Me too. I'm going there in a few weeks.
I got the flu there.
Oh, great.
In June.
Gross.
Yeah. It's awful.
Hope I don't get that. Melissa grew up in a close-knit family with her mom and her little sister Amanda. And Melissa did really well in school, but she tended to get into trouble and get into a lot of fights. She was 4'9", and her mom.
Tiny.
I know, she's really little, and her mom and her sister were like, yeah, she made up for her size in like
Feisty.
Spunk. She wanted to be a hairstylist. And so after high school, she eventually ended up moving to New York City with plans of one day opening a salon. It is not super clear how she got involved in escort work, although it's likely that it was through her boyfriend at the time, who was a man named Johnny, who was also the owner of a salon where she was working, ? I say that because that's what they said he was, but it was like, is that a front or...
Probably a front.
Yeah. And her family, for the most part, didn't know what she did for a living, although later on, Melissa would confide in Amanda, her sister, and kind of tell her more of what she did. I think the most she ever told her family was, like, maybe that she was, like, a dancer at, like, a nightclub, but she did not tell them that she was, like, working. I mean, she essentially had a pimp, which was Johnny, who was taking a cut of her money and setting up the dates and all that stuff. But Amanda, her younger sister, obviously knew a little bit more. Amanda would come down and visit Melissa during the summers, and like they stayed very close. Like things were normal when Melissa or when Amanda was there. And
she took time off.
She took some time off. And Amanda was planning a visit in the summer of 2009. I think it would be the third summer that she was going to go down there and spend a couple weeks with her. And when Melissa didn't text her mom back to finalize the dates for Amanda's visit, the family became worried. And they called the NYPD to try and report her missing. And can you guess what they said?
Can't report her missing.
They said...
Report her in Buffalo.
Yeah. They said, how old is she? Oh, an adult? She's not missing. She's where she wants to be. Oh, God. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I think they tried a couple times themselves to, like, call and report her missing. Mm-hmm. And they said finally they had to literally call in a favor with the Buffalo Police Department and get a Buffalo police officer to call the New York City Police Department and do it, which I fucking hate because it's like, okay, so it can be done and you just had to have the right person ask. Yeah.
They're like, man, we're too busy with all these other crazy people. We're not going to do something for these people out of town.
Yeah. Ugh.
Brush them off until they leave us alone.
And shockingly, even though the report is filed, the NYPD does not really do anything. And they don't even start to really take her disappearance seriously until...
her remains are found?
Actually, until Amanda starts getting phone calls from Melissa's phone. I'm not sure exactly when they started. They stopped in August. And she went missing sometime before the summer. But all of a sudden, Amanda she gets a phone call that's coming from Melissa's phone. And so at first, she's like,
oh, good.
Oh, great. We found Melissa. She's fine. But it was a man on the other end. And she said he sounded about middle-aged. He kind of spoke in a monotone voice, like he was trying to conceal an accent. And he essentially just said horrible things about her sister. Called her like a whore, called Amanda names, knew things about Amanda, knew things about Melissa. He would always keep his phone calls under a minute, and he would always call between 5:30 and 6:30 p.m. And eventually he told Amanda that he had killed Melissa, which was horrible because Amanda was like, and then I had to tell my mom that, which... And so this whole time, the phone company is refusing to help because phone companies are the least helpful. And, like, I get it. I understand privacy situations, but also I don't.
See, at this point, I'd be recording the phone calls, too, though.
So they said that, and then they were like, but her phone at the time, because it's 2010, or 2000, I don't know, did I say? 2009. They were like, her phone didn't have the capability of recording a call.
Yeah, but there's, like, tape recorders
and
I know.
Stuff. I have no idea what the deal was. But
if she's getting regular phone calls, she has time to find a way.
Yeah, that's true.
Use the freaking recording program on computers. Like, I used to play around with that all the time when I was a kid. It wasn't even the 2000s yet. The 90s computers had fun little recording, video or audio recording capabilities.
Well, I guess they also asked, like, the phone company, can you give us a phone or can you do something to this phone to make it record? And they were like, no, we're not going to do that. And finally, the Buffalo Police Department comes in again and is like, we will give you a phone that can record or whatever. The Buffalo Police Department is like, we'll help. And by the time they got it, by the time they got something to help them record this phone call,
the calls had stopped.
Yep. The press had found out about the phone calls, published a story about it, and the calls stopped. When the the NYPD did finally eventually trace where the calls had like pinged from.
Mm-hmm.
It was Madison Square Garden. And they were like, well, that's too populated. We can't really narrow that down. There's 1 million people there.
I mean, fair, but...
Fair, but also...
If they had done that sooner...
Yeah, like...
Like, the calls always came in at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, they could start having... Or at least I'm sure they've got patrol... You know, officers are on patrol through there.
Yeah.
At least send out a bolo. Like, be on the lookout for somebody who... You know, middle-aged man on their cell phone between the hours... You know, this hour...
I think it just very much sounded like the police were just like...
They don't care.
They don't care. So Megan's case went cold for 17 months.
Melissa.
Sorry, Melissa. Wow, I really wrote Megan there at the bottom. Melissa. Sorry, there's a Megan coming up.
I'm paying attention.
Okay. Maureen Brainerd Barnes is our next one. Maureen was born in 1982, or sometime around that based on her age. She was 4'11".
She looks like someone I was friends with in college. Turned out to be a total bitch.
Oh. Well, Maureen, and from everything I could tell, was not.
Also, my, air quotes there, friend
Oh.
was like 5'9".
Oh,
So,
okay. So,
Definitely.
not Maureen. Maureen was little. Yeah. She was the oldest of 3 to a single mom. And growing up, she really liked to read, and she really liked to write poetry and rap lyrics. And that was like her dream for life, was she was going to write rap lyrics. And she was a really good student in school, but she ended up dropping out when she was 16 because she got pregnant. But she was like, I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to break this cycle of poverty that my family has been stuck in, and I'm going to figure out how to make my dreams work. And she came across escort work on Craigslist, and she saw how much these women were charging, and she's like,
I can do that.
I can do that. So she decided that she was going to try it. And this is while she was living in Norwich, Connecticut. So she, like, was a self-made woman. She, like, did this herself. She started doing escort service, and she, like, made rules for herself, like, for safety reasons. Yep. And her routine, the way she would do it is she would travel to New York City, like, on the weekends and work there. And then she would commute back to Connecticut and work her day job during the week. And I think she almost always did it, like, with someone else. Like, it was, you know, always do it with someone. And another common thing that comes up a lot is not doing call-outs, but only doing call-ins, which is having a client come to you rather than you going to a client. Mm-hmm. That was, like, another big safety thing that a lot of these girls did, which was...
Makes sense to me.
Makes sense. So, in July of 2007, so we're further back, she is doing this. She's in New York, and she's with her friend, Sarah, who was new to escort work. She was, like, kind of showing Sarah the ropes. And they get to the end of the weekend, and Maureen hasn't really hit her goal for how much she's trying to make. She had an eviction hearing coming up, and she was like, I gotta make that money. And even though it's kind of against my own rules, like, I'm gonna keep working. Sarah, you can go home. Mm-hmm. I'm just gonna keep working and try to make, like, do some extra jobs. So that's what she did. Several hours after Sarah leaves, Maureen calls her sister from Penn Station and tells her that she has just gotten robbed, which sucks, and asks if her sister's husband can come pick her up because she doesn't have a way home. And her sister is like, he's actually working. He can't, like, right this second. Can we figure something else out? And Maureen's like, it's fine. I'll figure something out. I'll figure out a way to get home. Like, don't worry about it. And they said, like, when they hung up, like, it seemed like everything was fine. Maureen did not seem like...
frantic or in a panic.
Like, it wasn't like this was a big distressful thing. But that was the last time anyone heard from her. So, a missing persons report is filed in Connecticut, which goes nowhere. And 2 weeks later, Sarah, the friend, gets a phone call from a blocked number. And it's a man asking if she knows Maureen. He's like, I saw your ad on Craigslist. Do you know Maureen? And Sarah's like, who the fuck are you? And he describes Maureen, like, physically. And he describes her all the way down to a pink tattoo that she had on her arm that said Nicolette. He described it wrong, but Sarah was like, it was close enough. He said it was a red tattoo that said Nicole or something. But she was like, that was close enough. It was pink and it said Nicolette. But, like, specific enough that I knew he had seen her, like, knew who she was. And so Sarah's like, well, where is she? Because she's been missing for 2 weeks. Like, where the fuck is she?
Oh, I killed her.
Jeez.
Right?
Well, he says, oh, no, don't worry. She's fine. He says she's in a whorehouse in Queens. Which, sir, we do not call them that, but go off. Sarah's like, okay, can you be more specific, please? And he's like, oh, I'll get the address for you and I'll call you back. Does he call her back? No, he does not. Cell phone evidence would later show that after Maureen seemingly disappeared from Penn Station, because that's the last time we know where she was, her phone was turned on briefly a few weeks later in Long Island. So, who knows? Okay, our third body is Megan, the one I thought was the other one. Megan Waterman, who was 22. So Megan was born January 18th of 1988. She was born... Sorry, I just said that. Wow. Oh my gosh. She was raised mostly by her grandmother in Portland, Maine. And
Been there too.
Oh, look at you.
I didn't get to see much, but
Oh, well. Probably not a lot to see. And Megan had some behavioral problems as a child and a pretty also troubled childhood. And at 17, she was arrested and spent time in jail for shoplifting, which is not something you should be jailing teenagers for. Sorry, I will explain. Because of this, quote, criminal record for shoplifting. So because some dumb cop was like, you have to go to jail for shoplifting.
an example of her.
Yeah. Megan now has a criminal record, and so now she, like, is a teenager and, like, can't really find a job. Like, is having a hard time, you know, like, getting on her feet. So she kind of falls in with the wrong crowd, which includes her boyfriend, who's a guy named Akeem. And Akeem would eventually turn into her pimp. Because she's not able to really get a regular job. They find out, hey, this escort work or this sex work is easy money. I guess Akeem had done this before. Whatever, he doesn't sound like the best person. They start doing that. So he would take her to Long Island for trips or for, like, work. Mm-hmm. Presumably because the clientele in Long Island is a little bit better than in Portland, Maine. It was on one of these trips, June 6th of 2010. It's early morning hours, and Megan and Akeem are seen on security camera footage leaving a Holiday Inn Express together. And half an hour later, Megan returns alone, and then she calls Akeem at 1:15 and says, I'm going to run to the store real quick. I'll call you when I get back. She leaves at 1:23. Witnesses would later report seeing her walking along a service road towards a convenience store. And that is the last time that she was ever seen. And it's speculated that she got a call for a date, which this was, like, not part of the plan, presumably. Like, presumably she's staying at the Holiday Inn and clients are meeting her there. Mm-hmm. And what I think is she knew this person. she's telling Hakeem she's running to the store to, like, get stuff because she doesn't want him to know about it so that she can keep the money. She's actually just meeting this other John at the store, you know, for like kind of for a private job.
Got it.
But that is the last time that she is seen. And then we have our fourth victim, who is Amber Lynn Costello, 27. Amber was born in or around 1982. She was also 4'11". There's a type if you're if you haven't caught on.
Noticed that.
Amber and her sister Kim both got into the escort business early in life. They both started out working for a party girl escort service in North Carolina. Don't know what part. Couldn't figure that out. But they both became pretty heavily involved in drugs. They eventually went their separate ways. Kim went up to New York, and Amber actually went down to Florida, where she, like, got cleaned up. She found religion. She got married, like, was doing really well. And then at the end of 2009, things kind of started falling apart for her. I think her marriage kind of went bad. She fell off the wagon, started doing drugs again, and she ended up moving up to New York to be with her sister. And then they started, like, working together. So they had safety rules, like what I was talking about before.
Yep.
So some of their rules were they would exclusively only do in-calls. They would not ever do out-calls, meaning the client comes to you. They also had a rule, they would not have sex with their clients. They only danced, which I'm like, okay, I'm here for that. I could do that. I mean, not really. No one's paying me to dance, but
no one would want that from
no
me.
one would
but
want that,
it.
but I would accept. I would
I
accept
can
that.
do
offer.
it.
They also had friends. They had these two guys named Bear and Dave, who some articles called them their pimps, but they were not. These were just friends. Like, all four of them were just doing this thing together, and they kind of acted as, like, security.
I was about to say they're more like their bodyguards than boyfriends.
So they would, like, be in, like, the back room or the bedroom, and the girls would bring guys over into the living room, and then they would have, like, a safe word or, like, a safe song that the guys knew to listen for, and that meant, like, something's gone wrong, we need to come out and, like,
we need backup,
handle something. Yeah. So
we need muscle.
Yeah, I was like,
I like that.
That's kind of smart. So they had
not smart enough, apparently.
Yeah.
If we're talking about them.
Yeah, I know. So they were all living together and doing this thing. However, unfortunately, the worse that Amber's drug habit got, the more desperate she got for money, and she began to break some of her own rules. And in early September of 2010, she got a call from a guy who offered her $1,500 for a date, which was way more than what she would normally get. Mm-hmm. And this was an out call. This was not an in call. And the way this was first characterized when I first heard about it was this guy just called and was, like, kept calling her back and, like, offering more and more money, and was, like, really adamant that he wanted to see her. And Dave was like, this is very suspicious. I don't think you should go. And Amber was like, it's fine. I'm going to go. It'll be fine. Like, it's a ton of money. What you later find out is that this was a client she had seen the night before who had come to the house. And I didn't mention this, but they would sometimes pull like a ruse on clients sometimes, where either Bear or Dave would pretend to be a boyfriend. And the girls would have a client over, and then they would come in and pretend to be the angry boyfriend and run the guys out so that they got to keep the money without really having to do anything. So they did that to this guy who texted her and was like, that wasn't cool, you owe me. And then was calling her the next day and being like,
yeah, no, that's real fishy.
Yeah, you gotta make it up to me, like, whatever. So,
hey, man. Don't take it into your hands. Just call the Better Business Bureau.
Yeah, call the BBB.
Report it to them.
So Amber does not listen. She's like, I'm going to go on this date. So she leaves on September 2nd and just didn't come back from the date.
Never seen again.
Kim, her sister, said that she was going to file the missing persons report. And unfortunately, Kim's addiction was like really bad at that point also. And Kim never filed a missing persons report. So there was like, she was never reported missing. And it wasn't, and Dave thought that Kim had done it. So Dave didn't do any, like, Dave thought it was taken care of. And it wasn't until they like basically approached Dave, I think because he was like the next of kin they could find, or, you know, closest thing.
Yeah.
And said like, we need you to identify a body. Like, that's how he found out. And it was like, heartbreaking. So those are our 4 bodies that have been found in burlap sacks along this beach. And that was middle of December 2010. So January 25th of 2011, police officially announce that they believe they are looking for a serial killer. And also at this time, they're like, we are also going to pump the brakes on our search of the beaches because it's really cold and we're going to wait for the first thaw of spring. And like in the podcast, they were like, there's no reason they could not have been searching the beaches. Like, cadaver dogs are not affected by the cold.
They are. Let's be real.
Their little feetsies get cold, but like
they have booties for dogs.
Yeah, and their noses are not affected by them.
No, the snow is not going to block the smell.
Yeah, and they speculated that the real reason they paused the search is they were afraid that more bodies were going to show up.
That's what I was about to say. They're like, we don't want to find any more, so we're going to stop looking.
Yeah, they were afraid more bodies would show up before they could like kind of get a handle on things. So they stopped the search, but they were like, we're going to continue investigating. We're just not going to look. We're just going to not.
We're going to focus on these 4.
Yeah. We're just going to.
Then we'll go look for more.
We're just going to not look over there for a little while. So they did kind of look into the Gilgo Beach Four, as they were calling them. Noticed the obvious similarities, which was they were all
short sex workers.
Yeah. Very small, petite girls. All sex workers, and they all used Craigslist to advertise. Even, who was it? Who was the one that had the pimp? Megan?
Yeah.
Yeah, so even ones that had, you know, kind of a pimp who was working or who was doing stuff for them, they still used Craigslist. Apparently, even for police, Craigslist stuff is hard because Craigslist encrypts email addresses, which we all know. If you've ever bought anything on Craigslist, they give you that weird email address to like email the person back and forth with. And apparently that is they don't unencrypt it for murder investigations. I don't know. And whoever had
not helpful, Craig.
I know. Come on, Craig. Be like Angie. So also, like they found the emails obviously of like how they were contacted, but whoever had contacted them was also hiding their IP address, which was like a bigger deal in early 2000s, early aughts, whatever, than it is now. Now, I think anyone can hide your IP address with like a VPN, but back then I think it was like,
whoa,
techie.
This person knows their computers.
Yeah, like really high tech. Police believed that all the women knew the killer because they all went to meet him, and there seemed like there was some kind of element of trust to it. So that's
a repeat client.
Yeah, at least a repeat client. So that's kind of all they got until spring. So the first thaw arrives. Spring arrives.
They're like, all right, well, we said we were going to go back.
So here we are.
Did Blue get to go back out? Probably.
I want to say yes.
Probably not the only one, though.
So, March 29th of 2011, police find some more remains. 3/4 of a mile away from the first 4 bodies, or these remains are not wrapped in burlap, and they find a skull, a pair of hands, and a forearm. And they're like, oh, this is strange.
That's a word for it.
It's a word. And what is stranger is that these body parts matched a torso that was found in 2003 in Mannersville, New York, which Mannersville is approximately 50 miles east of Gilgo Beach. And the person that they belonged to was a woman named Jessica Taylor. She's your next picture if you want to look at her. Jessica was 20 when she was killed. She was a young woman from Poughkeepsie. She left home as a teenager, and she ended up working as an escort in New York City with a pimp known as Remy. And just before her disappearance in July of 2003, she had tried to leave her lifestyle behind and return to Poughkeepsie. But, like, the worst of worst lucks, her car broke down on her drive. And she was, like, closer to, like, the city than she was to her destination. So she had to hitchhike back to Brooklyn and just, like, go back to it. She was last seen alive between July 18th and July 21st. And on July 26th of 2003, her torso was found on a sheet of plastic at the end of an access road in Manorville, New York.
So we're basically at the anniversary of her death right now.
Yeah. She had a tattoo on her right hip that said Remy's Angel, which don't do that.
Yeah, no, I've been very non-judgmental through all of this. Just like, I personally find this hard.
Yeah.
But that one, I'm like, that's cringy.
That
Sorry.
that was also not meant to be a judgment on her as much as it was on Remy, who I assume had a hand in her getting that. And that tattoo had been mutilated with a knife of some kind. And it took them 7 months to identify her body, like, after it had been found.
Well, I mean, all they had was the torso.
That's true. Her head. And, like, they didn't find the other parts until 2011.
The parts that are a whole lot easier to identify.
This is true. That's very true. Okay, so that was end of March. April 4th, we're back on Gilgo Beach. They found a skull, a pair of hands, and a right foot. And this also matched a torso that had been found in Mannersville. This one belonged to Valerie Mack, who was 24. She was last seen in 2000 in Port Republic, New Jersey. She was 5 feet tall, just a little girl. She's the one that breaks my heart so much because she just looks like a baby.
Looks like a child.
I know.
She looks like a little bit like Merida from Brave, but like after a couple of years of hard life.
Hard living. Yeah. She looks 14 in that picture. Like, I cannot imagine. But she was in and out of foster care. Like, both her parents, I think, died when she was very young. She had a young son at the time of her disappearance. It's unclear how she got into escort work, but that's what she was doing. And she was never reported missing by her family. I have no idea why, but that's why. Her dismembered torso was found on November 19th of 2000 in a wooded area of Manorville near an access road. It was wrapped in garbage bags, and she remained unidentified until 2020, when genetic testing was finally able to identify her and notify her family, which at this point was her adoptive parents and her son, who is in his 20s at this point. And so, like, at the time that they found her other remains, they were like, we just know that this matches a Jane Doe from 11 years ago. I'm like, oh my gosh, this woman. So, same day, still April 4th, big day for hopefully Blue. They also found the body of an Asian man between the ages of 17 and 23. He was found very close to the original 4 girls, and he was found wearing women's clothing, and so there's speculation as to whether he was possibly transgender or just liked cross-dressing or whatever. He died of blunt force trauma approximately 5 to 10 years earlier. He was 5'6", and he had 4 missing teeth, and he also had a muscular skeleton. say that word? Musculoskeletal? Okay.
You got it.
Like, help me. A musculoskeletal disorder that may have affected his gait. And he is just unidentified. We don't know who he is. There is a composite sketch in that group of pictures if you want to see what he looked like. Also with him, there was a baby doe there's no pictures of baby doe, don't worry.
No.
Baby doe was between 1 and 3, found approximately 250 feet away from Valerie Mack. She was found wrapped in a blanket with no apparent signs of trauma.
Died of exposure.
I don't know. I don't think it mentioned. They also don't release a lot on, or they didn't release a lot on, like, causes of death or, like, not necessarily the conditions, but, like, the conditions are, like, what kind of evidence was left. On April 11th, 2 more sets of remains were found on separate areas of Jones Beach. So this is just a little further down. It's all one strip. Mm-hmm. The next 2 pictures in there are maps.
Can I go ahead and look at the maps?
Yeah, you can look at the maps. And they... I don't know. I printed 2 because one seems very confusing to me, but the other one that was less confusing didn't include all of the bodies. So on April 11th, they uncover the skull and several teeth of an unidentified woman who is known only as Jane Doe number 7. And she is connected to, sorry, wrong wordage. I'm going to reword that. Her legs were found in a garbage bag on Fire Island in 1996. So partial remains found in 96.
And they're just picking up puzzle pieces.
I know.
I mean, did they clarify that, like when the legs were found, mm-hmm. or when the torsos were found, and then they later found the skulls, hands, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Did they say that they were probably dumped at the same time, just spread out? And then not found, and found at separate times? We found this one, and years later we found these, but they were dumped at the same time.
I don't know if they ever released, how long this skull and teeth had been here. Mm-hmm. There is speculation on why they are being found in this spot, and the torsos and everything were, which I'm going to get to in just a second. Okay. So they find Jane Doe number 7, and then they also find Jane Doe number 3. I was not in charge of the numbers, so don't get on me for that. Mm-hmm. So Jane Doe number 3 was a dismembered skeletal remains found in a plastic bag. This Jane Doe was also known as Peaches, and this is because in 1997...
I hate the word toddler on there.
I know.
Okay. Why Peaches? Sorry.
Because in 1997, her torso was found in Hampstead Lake State Park, which is in Lakeview, New York. It was in a green Rubbermaid container found alongside the road, and she had a unique peach tattoo on her left breast. And so they just called her Peaches. In 2016, it was confirmed that the remains that they found in 2011 mm-hmm. Matched her, and it was also confirmed that she was Baby Doe's mom. So everything is connected. So Suffolk County Police are okay, we have 1 serial killer and 10 bodies. However, the DA is no, we have 2 serial killers. And then Shannon's family is where's Shannon? What the fuck are you guys doing? Okay, yes, I'm sorry you're finding all of these bodies, but also our daughter is still missing. So the 2 ideas here, the idea that there's 2 different killers, that idea is that there's the Gilgo Beach Four, mm-hmm. And possibly the Asian male, and that they were done by a trophy killer who killed young sex workers and then dumped their bodies all in close to the same place and lined them up.
And they were all in the burlap.
Yeah.
Versus
and put them somewhere where he could revisit them easily.
Yeah. As opposed to separating into pieces and dumping in multiple locations.
Yeah, so they think the other one was a torso killer, which I did not realize that was a whole thing. Yeah. But essentially that would be...
like the Cleveland torso killer an episode of Crime Junkie?
Well, it's one we did.
Oh, yeah.
It's also
I couldn't remember if it was ours or...
I want to revisit that one.
Crossover. But yeah, no, I've heard of torso killers before.
Yeah. So they essentially dismember the victims and then put the torso where people will find it for shock value. So, like, that kind of makes sense if they are two kind of distinctive MOs. And then they also point out a possibility is if that's the case, they think that possibly the torso killer, who gets his thrills from, like, shocking people, you know, got his thrills and his jollies back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then saw that this other killer was getting media attention and decided to take the remaining body parts that he had and dump them in the same area to gain more attention for himself.
Right. Go sprinkle where they'll be found so that the media can circle back around to him.
So that's one thought there. The thought or the theory about it being one killer is essentially...
Just evolution.
Yeah, like that he got... That in the beginning he was dismembering because he felt like he had to spread everything out to be more careful.
Less likely of them being found and identified and traced back to him.
And then after years of doing that and no one finding them, he was like, screw this, I'm just going to dump whole bodies.
A whole lot extra work I don't need to be doing.
I'm just going to dump them all in the same place. Which I'm like, I don't know, those are both
valid,
plausible theories. So, who knows? Okay. On December 13th of 2011, which was 1 year after discovering the first body, searchers find Shannon's remains on Oak Beach. She was found closest to Baby Doe, but she was pretty far away from the original 4. She was found face up, not wrapped up or dismembered. She was a quarter mile away from where they found her belongings. So, like, they found her jeans, and they said it looked like she had taken them off herself. And the coroner thinks that this is not murder. So the working theory is that she had... So we know that, like, mental illness was running in the family. Her mom, at least at one point, said that she had bipolar disorder. So the coroner speculates that she had a drug-induced panic attack of some kind.
A manic episode
of some kind, and that she ran out and either died of exposure. One theory was that that it got really cold, which I feel like would be easy to disprove or prove. Like, you could just look up the low in that area that night. But I guess because she took her pants off, they're like, oh, hypothermia, you, like, undressed at the end. Or one of the theories is that she, I guess, like, passed out and then drowned in, you know, like, 6 inches of water. Although she was found face up. So there's...
Also, isn't that something that they'd be able to discover if she drowned?
Yeah, but I think her remains were skeletal at that point. So I don't think they could really...
There were no tissue samples.
Yeah. And then also, I'm like, animal activity... I don't think it would be implausible to think if she had been face down when she died that something could have moved her body. Yeah. You know, it's not, I mean, it's been a year, so it's been more than a year, really. It's been a year and a half. One thing that was strange was that her hyoid bone was missing. And they said it could have been carried away by an animal, but it also could have been, like, that could have been something that happened. They said it could have been a sign of strangulation. I'm like, oh, bones don't go missing. A broken one, yes. I don't know. They did test the body for drugs, which they didn't find any, but they didn't test the bone marrow. They just tested, like...
whatever tissue might remain.
Yeah, so...
I feel like it would degrade, though, right?
Yeah, and it's like... I don't feel like they did very conclusive tests. But, like, the coroner and I think the police largely concluded that her death was accidental and was not related.
They just didn't want to add another file onto the serial killer desk.
And, like, her family does not agree with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, maybe it was an accidental thing. Maybe it's not related to the serial killer, but she still deserves, like, the same level of investigation. Like, just because they're overwhelmed with all these other bodies doesn't mean...
Yeah.
I mean...
Okay, I'm going to warn you. It's going to get real sad for a second, and then we're going to get better. We're going to go down real quick, and then we're going to come up.
All right.
Okay.
I'm going to put my head down.
Okay.
You just power through it.
Okay.
And we'll get there.
All right. So, Shannon's family did not agree at all with this. And her mom, Mary, really advocated and really fought for the police to, like, continue investigating, figure out what happened to her daughter. On July 23rd, which is today, which is also my birthday, of 2016, Sarah Gilbert, which is Mary's youngest daughter, so Shannon's youngest sister, texted one of her other sisters because she was having a kind of a psychotic episode herself. Sarah had schizophrenia, and she had been in and out of hospitals, and she texted her sister on this day and said she was hearing voices again. She desperately did not want to go back to the hospital. And so she called her mom, Mary, and she said, will you please come over? Because I can only imagine that she said, I'm scared. Can you come over? And Mary said, of course I will come over and be with you. However, shortly after Mary arrived, Sarah took a 15-inch knife that she had hidden under the couch cushion and stabbed Mary over 200 times in the chest and midsection. Ouch. Yeah. It is just... I can't. Sarah's defense argued insanity, obviously, and Sarah was found guilty and sentenced to 25 years in prison. But it just... I don't know why I needed to... I don't know. It just... I don't know. Like, the Gilbert family, I want to hug them. I can't. Okay, so I have an update for you.
So, like, as I was sitting here listening, I'm like, you know what? I have heard rumblings that there is, like, basically Long Island serial killer has been in the news, but I haven't looked into anything. So I haven't heard anything, but I know that something's new.
Well,
so update us.
On July 13th of 2023, an arrest was made. All right, so back up just a second. February 2022, so last February, they put together a task force to re-examine the case. This is when the smart police come into it, like the smart detectives.
We like this.
Like the handful of smart ones. So, February they put together the task force. A month later, in March, they're like, hey, we found an important clue that has literally been in this evidence the entire time. Everyone, I would love to talk to the man who found this, or woman. So what they had was an eyewitness had seen a dark green first-generation Chevy Avalanche truck being driven by who they believed was Amber Costello's killer. So remember when I said that Dave would sometimes come in and pretend to be the angry boyfriend? And they did that the night before.
Right.
Okay. So I think, I didn't get confirmation on this, but I think that Dave is this witness. Because they re-interviewed the witness who, like, described the truck. And he was able to give a description of the driver. And I'm like, the only way he'd be able to do that is if this person had, like, if he'd seen him.
Like, yeah, was definitely familiar with his face.
Yeah. And then it's, okay. And also, it's confirmed that this person was also the same person who was in the house the night before. Okay. So they re-interview this witness, and he gives this description. Bushy hair, big glasses, looked like an ogre, about 6'4". Which I'm like, chef's kiss of a description.
Yeah.
Thank you. So detectives are like, okay, so let's pull up something called the DMV records that literally everyone has access to, I think. A funny thing, I don't know if you know this, they take your picture at the DMV. And so there's pictures associated with your driver's license information and what car you own.
Yeah, and you are associated with the registration of said vehicle.
Yeah, also they put your height on there too. I don't know if anyone thinks of that.
Apparently these smart officers do.
I know. So they're like, all right, let's just on a guess, let's look up how many first generation dark green Chevy Avalanches there are on Long Island. Not that many. Guess how many of them are owned by an ogre looking 6'4" asshole? One. Take a look at your picture. Sorry, I flipped it over in case you were peeking.
You're smart.
59-year-old Rex Hewerman.
Oh, that name suits him.
Right?
And ogre does suit him.
And he's 6'4" exactly. He is an architect. Sorry, he was an architect. He's not anymore. He had been living with his wife and 2 children in Massapequa Park across the bay from Gilgo Beach. Okay. Very quickly.
Meanwhile, apparently seeing sex workers.
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to tell everyone, first of all, go listen to LISK. They're so much better at this. But also the very last source that I'm going to list on here, I'm saying LISK and list too much, is the actual PDF of the bail application that the prosecution submitted. It's 32 pages. Don't worry, you'll breeze through it. So they submitted this after they arrested him. This was like what they submitted to say, like, this is why he should not get bail. This is why you shouldn't let him get out on bail. And it was essentially all of the evidence that they had collected against him to be like, this is how we know he did it. And it like
give us the highlight reel.
Okay. So they start out by saying, you've owned this ugly ass truck for the last 20 years and you still own it, which is stupid. And you match the description. So they start looking into him. They were able to show through cell phone data that he was in the same general location as the burner phones that were used in the calls to Melissa's family. Because I think he used Melissa's phone at one point and then started using burner phones. Also, the call stopped when he was out of the country. So, like, we're starting with circumstantial evidence. That's fine.
Yep.
Get him in the general area. Then they found, quote, a number of online accounts and burner cell phones linked to Hewerman, but which were held by him in fictitious names and used for illicit activities. They go on to list his internet search histories. Read with caution, he searches the most horrendous porn. Also, he searched over 200, he made over 200 searches related to the LISK case with, like, very specific questions about, like, why they hadn't caught him and, like, why they couldn't trace the phone calls. And he was, like, looking up podcasts about it and looking up, like, all this information about it. And it's like...
So he's a sicko and a narcissist.
Yeah, like... So they're like, okay, this is probably him. Let's figure out how to nail in the coffin. So also within this DNA, also within, I showed my hand. Also within this evidence, they had some hairs that had been found on the bodies. However, the hairs were pretty degraded, and in 2011, they could not accurately test them for DNA. Well, ding, ding, ding.
That was 2011.
It's 2023 now, and we can. So they're like, we have to get some DNA. So what did they do? They watched that fucker until he got some pizza, And then they waited for him to throw the pizza box away, and then they took it from the trash.
Nice.
There's like a picture of the pizza crust that they got his nasty DNA off of. So they get his DNA from a pizza crust. They matched it to one of the hairs that they found on the victim. They also went through his family's trash, obviously. They matched they matched his wife's DNA to hairs that they found on 3 of the victims.
No.
His wife was out of town, though. So they think, so they think it just, like, transferred.
Or, like, maybe from his vehicle.
Yeah, there is speculation because literally new stuff is coming out every day. So, like, who knows what's going to be out by the time this comes out. There's speculation that he might have killed some of them in his home while his wife and children were away. Mind you, his wife has already filed for divorce from him.
Good.
Which I'm like, good move, sis.
Step 1. Yeah.
If I found out that my husband had gotten my DNA on a crime scene that he committed, like, absolutely divorce.
If I found out my husband was murdering
well,
women.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that. That is the first part, but also, like, endangering you by getting your DNA there. So they arrested him outside of his Manhattan office and charged him with the murders of Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Lynn Costello. Investigators said that he is the prime suspect in Maureen Brainerd Barnes' murder and that they expect to charge him with that soon. And he has pled not guilty, which, who cares?
Good luck.
And he is being held without bail at this time. But I'm obsessively following, like, there's so much. Oh my God. When I tell you I got into this.
Trial's going to be interesting.
I know. And, like, when I got into this and I was like, there's so much. All I can say is everyone just needs to go listen to another podcast about this because I can't. And LISK is doing, like, season 3 is all about the live stuff.
Yeah.
And they, like, obviously have, like, access to, I don't want to say access to because that makes it sound creepy, but, like, they have been interviewing, like, family members and, like, you know, like, they interviewed Dave or whatever for, like, previous episodes. So, like, they have access to, like, you know, way better sources or whatever. There's so much. And there was a video, which this should not count as a source, but some girl posted a video about how she knew Rex because she was an interior designer and met him through networking, and
he creeped her out real bad.
Everyone is talking about how creepy he is, like, in retrospect.
Look at him.
But she was like, he asked me in passing, like, when we were at a bar, if I'd heard of the Gilgo Beach murders. You know, he was asking her about it and was like, isn't it crazy that there's this serial killer out there and they've never caught him and he killed, like, 10 people? And I'm like, did you just admit to killing 10 people and not... So now I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I believe that there was one killer or 2 killers. And I'm so invested in it now. There is also a series called Lost Girls.
Well, if he is, like, you know, a narcissist or, like, you know, super invested, it might be that, like, once he, like, basically if they, like, totally nail him and he's about to fry, he's probably going to be one of those people that's like, all right, fine, like, you know, once he's exhausted all of his appeals and there is no chance of him, you know, getting out of this or whatever, if he's about to fry, I feel like he's one of those people that would probably be like, all right,
yeah,
I have no other option, like, you're going to pull the switch any day now, I'll go ahead and tell everything, because that would also be another way to prolong, like, if for some reason they go for, like, death penalty or whatever on trial, obviously there's going to be appeal after appeal after appeal, but then another way to prolong it is to be like, okay, I did kill at least one other person, and I'll tell you more, or I'll lead you to some more evidence, because then they'll have to open up another trial for this other person.
And, like, we all know that, like, serial killers don't just stop killing, and
they might go through, like, cooling off periods, but they take hiatuses, sometimes a couple of months, sometimes decades.
And they are, I mean, like, he has a property in Las Vegas and he's got a property in South Carolina, and I know they're now investigating both of those. They're investigating unsolved disappearances in both of those areas now.
But how do they know that if all of the missing persons reports, like, just because someone went missing in South Carolina, that's probably not reported there because they're from friggin' Alabama.
I know. I don't know. It's ridiculous. There is I thought it was a series. It's I guess a movie or a documentary on, I don't know if it's still on Netflix. It is called Lost Girls, an Unsolved American Mystery, that is about the whole thing. But anyways, that's the Gilgo Beach murders / the Long Island serial killer / I think our first current events one.
Yeah, nice.
Thanks.
All right, well, if you want to see the pictures from tonight, you should check out our Facebook and Instagram at the Tales We Tell podcast. If you want to see photos but don't do the social media, go to our website, thetaleswetellpodcast.com. If you want to support us and get yourself some sweet, sweet swag, go to redbubble.com, search The Tales We Tell. We've got several adorable logos, and you can put that on pretty much anything.
Hell yeah.
And if you want to support us but you don't need the stuff except, I don't know, commercial-free listening, early access, bonus content, love notes, stickers, etc., become patrons at patreon.com. Search The Tales We Tell.
Yay. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.